morning and welcome to my girlfriend's Quilt Shop's adult Thready class. Okay, we are so excited to be offering a Thready Box with 3 different projects for adults. These projects are geared towards the beginner sewer, but anybody can do them and you will love the results. Okay, so in the box you are going to get the patterns and all the supplies to make an apron, a pillow, and a wall hanging. Today we are going to start with the apron. So I'm going to show you this apron that you will be making. Really cute. It's a half apron with a pocket and a little towel holder. So it's a little tab that your towel slips right through. Okay, 2 things. You can place your pocket on your apron wherever you want. Some people like it in the middle, some people like it to the left, some people like it to the right. So you are going to have the option to place that pocket wherever you like, and we will talk about that when we get to it. The apron consists of a half yard of main fabric and a half yard of the waistband, ties, pocket, and towel holder. So let's get started. Okay, so you are going to first trim up your main fabric to a 18 by 40 inch piece. So what we do is we just have the fold, we cut it, we get a large ruler, and we're going to place it on there, and we are going to put it on our mat, and we are going to cut 18 by 40. Now, because I have the fold, you'll just go 18 by 20, leaving the fold in there. And then you'll open it up. The second step we're going to do is to cut our waistband, our pocket, and our towel holder. So I recommend always to cut all of your fabrics prior to sewing. It makes it easier. You know what's going where, and you know if you have enough fabric or if you're going to have to grab something else. Okay, so your tie is going to be cut into 2 of the width of fabrics. And then what you're going to do is you will cut one of those width of fabrics. So what it is a 4.5 inch wide. So you've cut it 4.5 wide by the width of the fabric. So put the fold, you just cut a 4.5 inch strip once, a 4.5 inch strip twice. Then what you're going to do is take one of those strips and you're going to cut it in half and you will sew it. So I've already done that, but I'm going to show you. You're going to sew it to each end of that other width. So here's your one width. You've cut the second one in half and you're sewing it right onto the ends of that. Okay, then what we're going to do is set that aside and you are going to cut your pocket. So your pocket is a 8 by 12 piece. So 8 by 12, and then you're just going to fold that in half, right sides together. Make sure you do right sides together, and we'll set that aside. And the same with the little towel loop. Okay, so our towel loop is a 4 by 8. And we'll cut that. And then we'll go over how to put that together after we get the rest of the apron, because that's close to one of our last steps. Okay, so I'll set that aside. So next, what I'm going to show you is how we recommend when you're hemming something like this apron, it is going to need both sides, both of your short sides, and one of your long sides. Now this fabric is called non-directional. It doesn't have a top or a bottom. I could flip it either way and have that as my top or bottom. If this was a piece of fabric that had words, writing, animals or something, you would be hemming the bottom. Okay, but we don't have to worry about that. So we just laid it out how we liked it and then we hem it. So I'm going to show you what we do. So we use either one of 2 methods. The first is if you just have a sewing machine, you do a 1/4 inch fold, press, another 1/4 inch fold, and sew. So I'm going to take this over to the iron and show you how we do that. So after you've done this a while, you kind of get in your mind what a 1/4 inch is. But I always like to just lay my ruler on there, see about where a 1/4 inch is, and then I'm just going to fold that up and I'm going to press that all the way across. Now this is going to be going both sides and the bottom hem of my apron, my main piece of my apron. Then I'm going to fold it one more time. I'm then going to press it again, just like that. And if you're not comfortable with your press, you can always pin that. You can take the clips and hold it in place. I like to use a best press or some kind of a very light starch when I do this. Then I know it's just going to hold in place really well. We spray it. And then I give it one more good press. And I don't have to pin. I don't have to clip. Nothing. I know that's going to stay there when I go to sew it. Okay, I'm going to take that. Look how nice that lays. I'm going to take that right over to my sewing machine. I'm going to put it right on the 1/4 inch. There we go. And we're just going to sew right along there. And I'm going to do both sides and the bottom all the way. Okay. Cut my thread. And this is what we want it to look like. On this darker, you can see a nice, even 1/4 inch stitch. So if I show you on my apron, I've already done this. I've done both of my sides. I'm folding that fabric in towards the wrong side of fabric. So I have the smooth side on the outside, and then I did the bottom. Okay, so that is the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is we want to gather the top of that apron. Okay, so if I just do that with a regular stitch, it's not going to work. I am not going to be able to gather it. So what I will do is I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. I have done the first row. I'm going to show you how to do the second row. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the stitch length on my sewing machine to a 5. You can even go higher if your machine goes higher, but 5 is as high as my machine goes. So that is pretty much a basting stitch. That's a very long stitch. You can see I've already done one on there. The next thing I am going to do is I need to pull out my thread. So I always like to, because it's hard to get in there, I just take the foot off, I grab that top thread, I pull a little bit out. I'm going to go needle down, needle up, which now brings my bobbin thread up, and I'm going to lift that, and I'm going to reach in there, and I'm going to pull my bobbin thread out. Okay, so I have about 6 inches of thread. I'll put my foot back on. Clip it right back in there if it wants to. Sometimes the thread wants to get in the way, so keep your thread out of the way when you put the foot back on. There we go. And really important on this step is that you do not lock your stitch on either end. That's why you have these long pieces of thread. So if you look at what I previously did, I already have 2 long pieces of thread. We're going to move those out of the way. I have put those 1/4 inch in. Now I'm going to put this one 1/4 inch in from that. So I will have 2 rows of stitching. I will not have a lock on there because I'm going to gather with that thread, and I'm just going to start and go across the whole thing with all of that thread. Move that thread out of the way. We don't want it getting caught in our stitches. And this is probably the easiest way to gather. The reason you're using the 2 is it's just a little stronger. 1 would work, but 2 make your gathers lay just a little bit better, and it makes that just a little bit stronger when you're pulling on those threads to gather. Okay, then I'm going to come to the end, I'm going to stop, needle up, and I am not going to cut my threads once again. I'll lift the foot and I'm going to pull them out about 6 inches. Okay, cut my thread. We're going to go back over to the cutting table and I'm going to show you how to gather. So what we want to do is gather this all the way up so it's going to fit in our waistband that we will make. So I like to grab the 2 bottom threads. So don't know if our camera gets quite close enough to show you this, but you have 2 bottom threads here. One got a little caught up. So you're just going to start gently pulling and pulling your gathers across as you go. I like to kind of just loop it around my fingers and gather it. And you're going to go right towards the middle. You know where the middle of your apron body is. So you're going to pull those right towards the middle. You don't want to gather all the way across. You'll use the other side to do those. Okay. I'm going to gather about right there. I'm not going to tie it yet because we will be measuring it to make sure it fits. So I just leave that. I go to the other side. I do the same thing. Find the 2 bottom threads. 1 and 2. You could pull the top threads also, but I learned doing the bottom threads. It's always been easy. So do the same idea. Just start gently. You don't want to tug and pull too hard or these threads will break. And then you just have to go back and do it all over again. So then we're just going to pull those gathers right in towards the middle of the apron. Keep going. And once we get this all done, we can even these gathers out a little better once we know how big we need it and where it's going to fit in our waistband. Okay, so we are done with the gathers for right now. I'm not tying anything off. I'm going to set that aside and we're going to go ahead and make our pocket. Okay, so the pocket is just the 1 8x12 folded in half and we're going to sew that. Now what you want to remember to do is leave an opening on one of those sides so you're going to turn it inside out. So let's take that to the sewing machine. We're going to use a 1/4 inch. Again, make sure you put the length of your stitch back to your regular. Don't be using the 5.0 anymore. There we go. And we are going to stitch all the way around, making sure we leave an opening. So I'm just going to go 1/4 inch. Stop. And it doesn't really matter where you leave that opening. You do want to lock your stitch wherever it is because when you turn it, you don't want those stitches to pull out. Okay, so clip. We leave about a 3-inch opening, so we're going to move it right about here. Do the whole, lock our stitch. And continue going around. Okay, we went all the way around. We've left our opening for turning. We're going to take it back to the cutting table. And I'm going to take my scissors, and to make your pocket lay nicely, anything that you are turning right side out, you always want to clip the corners. So I like to put my thumbnail right on the edge so I don't clip through the stitches, but I actually get just the corner of the fabric out of the way. That way, when I turn it, it just lays nicer. It doesn't have a bunch of bulk in there. And do all those. Then I'm going to reach through right here in my opening, and we will turn it right side out. If you have a chopstick, you have a R&K turning tool, anything that doesn't have a super sharp point, you can just reach in there with your tool and poke those corners out nicely. If you've clipped them, a lot of times they'll just poke out nice on their own. They don't even need help. Okay, and then I'm going to take that over to my iron. Here is my opening. I'm going to make sure when I press it that opening presses closed. And then when we sew it onto our apron, it'll just sew right over there. Okay, so let's take it over to our iron and press it. Press all four sides, press your corners nice. And then I like to top stitch the top of my pocket. It just makes it look more finished. So lock it. There we go. Okay, right now, as I'm top stitching, I can feel, and this is something to be aware of, that it did not press out really well right here. You can see there's a little bit of a fold. So I'm going to go back over to my iron and I'm going to press that one more time and get that seam all the way out on the edge, just so it looks like a nice clean rectangle. It doesn't have your edges of your pocket curving in. Looks like the bottom's good, the top's, let's see what this other side looks like. Same thing. We're just going to press that out a little bit nicer so we get a nice edge on that. Then we'll press that one. And our pocket is ready. So this is where we are going to now decide, looking at our apron, we've got a little bit of a gather. The reason I gather it prior to putting it on, if you don't gather, it kind of gives you a false sense of where that pocket needs to be placed. So now what I do is I just hold it up to myself, and I like my pockets, because I'm left-handed, I like them over here on my left side. I know this is just about here, so I just bring it over here. Know that my pocket's going to be right about in here where I like it, and I'm going to place it on there, and I'm going to pin it in place. So a good rule of thumb to make sure you get it nice and even, you're going to measure up from the bottom. So we are 5 inches up from the bottom. So I'll pin that corner. I'm going to pin this corner, move it up 5 inches. And then you can do the same thing coming in from the side. So I want it 5 inches. This is about 5.5. So let's make sure this one is the same as this one. There we go. So we're just going to pin that. And then now we're going to just go over and stitch that pocket right on to the front of our apron. And like I said, you may like your apron turned this way, or your pocket a longer look, a wider look. This is up to you, however you want that pocket. You may even want to put 2 pockets on there, You could do that too. So we've provided you enough fabric to do one, but you could always add another one. So now I'm just going to top stitch that in place. I definitely want to lock my stitch so that pocket does not pull as I'm using it out of the way. I'm going to stop and turn the corner here. So this is where we want to make sure when we do this that we catch that little opening. So make sure that it's pressed nice and you're going to catch that opening there. Some people top stitch using a 1/4 inch. I prefer about 1/8 of an inch. I don't like going the full 1/4 inch. That way, if I'm using between 1/4 and 1/8 or 1/8 of an inch, I am sure I'm catching that seam from closing that pocket, from that turning hole. And last side. Okay, lock it again. Make sure you lock it so that does not pull out when you're using it. Cut your threads and your pocket is on. Okay, now we're going to go back and we are going to make our waistband. Okay, the waistband has a few steps that we need to really pay attention to make it work. Okay, the very first thing was that we sewed those ends on. So we've got that done. The second thing you're going to do is you are going to fold over both long ends 1/4 inch and press. Do not sew them. You're just going to fold them over 1/4 inch and press. So we're going to do both of these long ends. You're folding to the inside. Okay? Then you are going to fold it right sides together in half and press. That's really important that you remember it's right sides together. That is probably the most confusing part because it looks odd. You would think you're going to be sewing it this way and top stitching it, but we're not. Okay, so now we are going to mark the ends of our tie so we have a nice little angled corner here. So you will take a marking pen and measure in 3 inches on this edge, the edge that we have folded over 1/4 inch, put a dot, and then you're going to take your ruler and mark from the top folded out to that dot. Okay, we're going to do that on both ends. Let's do the same thing here. I'm going to just lay it like this. I'm going to mark in 3 inches. And I'm going to make my line, and then we're going to sew directly on that line. Okay, if you're more comfortable using a couple of pins, we'll take and just pin it and hold it in place as we go. Okay, let's take that over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew right directly on that line that we drew. Okay, I like to lock that because you are going to be kind of poking that out just a little bit. So we do want to make sure that's nice and locked on that. Same on the outside, lock it. And then we will do the other end. Same idea. Okay, and then we're going to take this back over to our cutting table with a nice, good, sharp pair of scissors. We're going to trim that off. 1/4 inch on the outside of that stitch line. Both sides. And now we will turn it, and you'll have those nice little points already made. Okay, and we'll do that on both. And then we're going to take this back over. We're going to fold it in half now with wrong sides together. And I'm going to use my little tool to poke those all the way out. Get nice sharp points. There we go. And we'll take it over and we're going to press it in half with wrong sides together. We are coming back over to our table. We're going to lay that right there to the side for just a second. We are going to make our little towel loop. So it is super easy. You are just going to sew down both sides after you have folded it. So it started out as a 4x8. First thing you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half. Then you open that up and you fold each side into the center and you fold it in half again and press it. Then we're just going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch on each long edge to do a nice top stitch. Hold it together. One side, let's do the other side. You really don't even have to lock the stitches on the ends on these because they're going to be up in the seam. Okay. Now we get to do the fun part. Okay, this is where I'm going to introduce you to one of my absolute favorite little methods of doing things. Move everything out of the way here. So, first of all, the nice thing about this apron pattern is it is adjustable. Okay, some people need it gathered a whole lot and don't need a lot in the front, and some people need a little more apron body, and so they aren't going to gather it quite as much. So what I like to do prior to making it, if I'm making it for myself, I'm going to hold it up to myself and I'm going to say, yep, that's just about where I want the sides of my apron to come. Some people like them to come around the side further, so they're not going to gather it quite as much. Some people like a lot more right in front and really gathered, so they'll do more. This is just about perfect for me. This is where I want my pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all those strings that were on the end, 4 threads in all this thread, and I am going to tie it off. I'm just going to tie real nice and snug so that my gathers will not come undone. Okay, so we just pull it through and tie that off really nice, right up against your apron. Put a couple of knots in there just for good measure on each side. This is once you have it all set, exactly like you want it. If you're making it for a friend or somebody as a gift, we recommend about 20 inches across is a good measurement. So you would gather it up until it comes to about 20 inches. So now I'm going to tie off this side over here. Pull those threads right through. Pull it right up to the apron body. Do it another time. And I have my gathers locked. They should not be able to come out from there. Okay, they're not going to come out. So now this is a good time that you can just kind of smooth your gathers out so they're nice and even. You don't have a whole bunch in one spot and one spot's all empty. So you're going to move them all out. And the other thing is to hold it up and see if all of your gathers lay nicely. Because when you sew across them, if you have a big bunch in one area, you're not going to stitch very nice. So I think that looks really good. Now I'm going to go, okay, I want my towel loop probably right about here. You can put it wherever you want, but this looks like a good spot. So I'm just going to clip it right here. And then I'm going to take it and I'm just going to stitch right across there just so it holds it in place. That way it's not going to move out of place while I'm putting my apron in the waistband. So I'll go just about 1/4 inch, hold that in place, and stitch right across there. There you go. My towel loop is in place, my pocket is in place, and I am now ready to put the waistband and ties together. So the important thing is you're going to find the center of both pieces. So I'm going to take my apron, I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to say right there's my center. I like to mark it with something that I can really see. So I put a clip right there. That is the center of my apron. I'm going to do the same thing with my waistband. Fold it all the way in half. Just like this. I know this is my center. Take a little clip and clip right on that center. Now we're going to open it up. I'm going to open it up twice. So open this way, and now we're going to do this. Now I'm going to take and match up my centers, lay it right here. I would love to say we can use clips at this point, but we can't. We have to use pins at this point because you're all the way in. So you're just going to pin it in place right there. And take those out, and you're going to just lay it all the way nicely right along your waistband. You want to make sure that the top of your apron comes right up. So then when we fold this over and sew it, we're catching all of that, okay? You can, if you're really good at what you're doing and you know you can catch it, you can bring it down a little bit more if you're comfortable with that. But this is the first time you've done it, I would recommend bringing it all the way up to the top. So then what I do is after I've got that first pin in holding that there, now I'm bringing it down, folding it, and just pinning it right along there. You've pinned it on the top. You're going to flip it over and go, look, perfect, 1/4 inch right along there. And we're just going to go all the way along. Doing that. Making sure that I got it all the way up into the fold. I'm leaning against it here. Pin it right here. And we'll do that again on this one. And you can feel right through there that it made it all the way up. If you're comfortable with just laying this flat, you don't have to pin it. If you're not comfortable with that sewing nice and even, go ahead and put some pins there. Go over to the other side. Now what you want to make sure to do before you pin this is that you take that center one out that you marked with. You don't want to sew that into your waistband. Okay, and I always just pop it over just to make sure it's even. So when I sew that, it's going to catch both sides of that waistband. Get a couple more pins in here and we are good to go. Okay, we are ready to stitch it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take and stitch all the way along, all the way around. We're not going to do that. We've got one all done, but you will stitch all the way around that tie. Be a perfect apron, just like this. Got my pocket where I want it, have my towel loop where I want it, and we have finished our very first adult Thready Box project. Yay! Very cute, very fun. Great gift ideas if you want to either give the adult Thready Box to somebody and let them sew their own projects, or sew up all the projects and give them to them. So we have finished the first project for our adult Thready Box. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will be back with the second project, the Star Pillow.